There's been a couple of times in doing the work where when I get to um, question four, who am I without the thought? Um, how do I describe this? It it's like it's not a positive thing. It's like okay, like it happened to me yesterday. I was questioning something around money and health insurance, and it's like if I have to have health insurance, something along those lines. And then it's like, who am I without that thought? It brings me into this. There's such a protection around that thought that like it's like it would bring me into a place of being too naive, um, irresponsible, or something. Yeah, so I'm just curious about that because I noticed that now happened again a second time and just wanted to know if anybody else has that experience and then, you know, where to go with that.
Yeah, great question. Really important one too. Uh, the work's job is to challenge anything we have, any thought we have, it just stands there kind of innocently. Oh, you have that thought? Let me challenge it. Oh, you have that thought? Let me challenge it. It's going to challenge anything. And you can guarantee that if you're feeling stressed about something, that there's something off inside also that when it gets challenged can can get clearer or can be let go of, and so there's less stress around something. But there's also a fine line where my thinking also determines my action, and there is a value in being responsible in the world and taking care of oneself, having health insurance and that kind of thing. So my my go-to feeling for this is that I have common sense also, and that just because the work challenges a thought that I'm having doesn't mean that I have to ride that all the way into the sunset and be completely, like taken away by that turnaround. I use my common sense to find out where the balance is, and balance is a big concept for me when I'm doing the work, especially turnarounds and also question four. But just you feel when you've gone too far with something. And so then you can just trust that. The real work is listening to yourself, not just the questions and everything. The questions are there to guide you and to say, hey, look over here, test that out, look there. But you have to look over there and then see if that makes sense for you, and then take however much of it makes sense for you, and then go with that. And so it's a process of taking responsibility for yourself. So one thing that people worry about with the work, and it can happen, is if you just take the work as if it's telling you what to do, and it's now giving you some kind of, it's like an authority above you or something. But that's not what the work is. It's just questions. It's just saying, is it true? Can you absolutely know it's true? And who would you be without that thought? And so play with those questions, but don't forget that you're the boss. You're the one that finally decides what you do with your life and what feels balanced and what feels right. And don't forget that. This part that decides may be off too. Keep that in mind. Oh, that's part of this. There's no solid ground here, but keep checking in and stay honest with yourself instead of trying to please the turnaround in a way, which can happen. Or in your case, question four, seeing like, who would you be without the thought, I have to have health insurance? You were seeing like, it's getting into the land of a little bit not being responsible for myself. And so good to notice. And you might also back it down a notch and say, who would I be without the thought, I have to have health insurance, even while being responsible? Like, even like, who would I be without the have to the have to that's pushing me and making me, like, driving me or making me stressed, because there's a have to in there that's also got some edge to it or some flavor of imbalance to it. So let me be without that much of it and then see what's left. And I might find I'm still going for health insurance, but without the have to, without the push, or without the force that I may have been using when I was believing the thought originally. So this is the nuance of the work, and it all comes down to paying attention to your experience and to what makes sense to you, and finding that balance. It's never the want that's the problem. It's the attachment that's the problem. It's never the doing that's the problem. It's the pushing myself to do that's the problem. So it's the subtle piece of it that the work's actually addressing, not the actual action or the actual the actual doing.
Yeah, that helps. That helps. I think as you're talking, I'm realizing that there's a tendency um, for me and probably others as well to, strive to be like a little bit more evolved than we are in this moment, and like I even at times had seen just how um, I don't know, relaxed with things Byron Katie is, and like want to mimic that. It's just like I can imagine, I don't know. In my head, my interpretation is that the belief that you need health insurance maybe is not a belief to her. I have no idea. But like, to me, I create this character of somebody who is so evolved that health insurance is just a concept, and it's so like human of me to feel like I need it. It must be my ego or something. And so when you're talking, it feels like a lifting of pressure around that. Yeah, I guess that striving to feel like I need to let go of beliefs that are keeping me trapped or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Very, very important. When you're doing the work, you have to be honest. It's like with question 1 or question 2. I want the honest answer of how I'm actually feeling, not the intellectual version of what I think I should be answering. I want to know from inside, what am I feeling? Is it true? Yes. Okay, I'd rather have that honesty than an intellectual no that doesn't really touch me. Same with question 4. It's got to be honest. If I'm pretending to be all peaceful, oh, who would you be without the thought? I'd be so peaceful. I would just see that health insurance is just a concept, and I just would be so above it all that I wouldn't care, right? So that, who knows whether that's even what being evolved looks like. But the story of it, I'm trying to imitate what I think is some higher version or higher evolved state. And that's not the work. That's me trying to imitate others. And we all do that. It's natural. But it's your own truth that sets you free. So you have to keep coming back to what makes sense to me, what feels right to me, where I am, as I am, and answer from there. And it may not look pretty, it may not look amazing, it may not look spiritual, but I would rather be real than spiritual. And I would say Byron Katie would say the same thing. Yeah. That's what makes the work work. It starts with something real, an emotion, like it got triggered by something. That's real. That happened. I can't deny it. I feel it. It's real. And then if I'm doing the work honestly and taking my time with each question and finding what's actually true for me as best I can see it, then that honesty is what transforms my experience and gives me new experience. But if I try to rush it or try to be more evolved than I am, then it becomes like just words. It becomes like things that we've all read in books and all of that. And it's good. It's maybe true to some degree, but it's not my truth. And so it doesn't touch me. It doesn't really free me.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you. I feel a layer of identity ready to release around that, coming from being raised in a strict religion where if you it's tied to this concept that if you sin, you won't go to heaven. I know that might not sound like it relates, but it's like for me, it's like there's an inner kind of perfectionist in the spiritual sense. If I don't get this right now, then something bad's going to happen. So I better sort of force myself to uh, whatever spirituality I'm in at the time, release my ego, or you know, in the context of what we're talking about now, or else. And so when you're talking, it's just like I'm realizing that that's kind of what's underneath it, and that there could even be a worksheet around that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's a really good point. I'm glad you tied it in with religion because the, what sometimes happens is that we're interested in spiritual evolution. We all are. And sometimes we make the external uh, belief system, external dogma, if you will, or external structure of religion, or not, doesn't have to be religion, any kind of spiritual practice. Like you can even see where you're starting to do that a little bit with Byron Katie. Like that tendency is there to take something, spiritual evolution, which is an internal process, and externalize it. And so I'm trying to follow what someone says about spirituality instead of what real spirituality is, which is learning how to follow myself. That's where all religions point. That's where all spiritual paths point. But sometimes the 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 words and all the structure of religion or spiritual paths becomes more distracting almost than helpful in that way. Not that it's not helpful, but we get distracted by it. If we really listen to the message, it's saying, go check it out. Go see what's your experience. Come, kingdom of heaven is within, like that kind of stuff, right? So that's where it moves, where it's pointing, but we're stuck on looking at the billboard going, oh, I want to be like that billboard there. And the billboard saying, go check see who you are. So that's the problem sometimes of having external support. And it's, and you got to have it because otherwise we don't figure things out. So there's a kind of a catch-22 there. But if you can be aware of it, and if you can just pay attention to what's actually being asked. Like you asked Byron Katie, her main words she'll say over and over again are, don't believe a word I'm saying, check it out, test it for yourself. So that's the calling. And I think all great religions have that to some degree. So it's a matter of not getting distracted by the messenger and but rather listening to the message, and even then letting that go and just finally listening to yourself. I think of the work, how I define it for myself, the work is a way of listening to myself. And it doesn't need any, there's nothing that I need to imitate to do that. In fact, the more I imitate, the farther away I get from my own experience. The problem is, all of life is set up this way, religious or not religious. We grew up, we trained, it's the way the world works. We look to others to learn how to read and write and play sports and do all the things that we do in life. And so we've followed people, we've imitated people our whole lives, and that's normal. So spiritual path sort of says, okay, now we've come this far, and now let's try going back in the opposite direction and start asking ourselves, and let's start looking, what is my truth? And that's what the work always is asking. And so everybody says this, even Byron Katie, or whatever, whatever you think it is that you're trying to follow, just bring it into question, and then start listening and finding out what your truth is, because only that is going to be able to set you free. Otherwise, you'll look and everyone will say, you sound just like her, you're amazing, and all that, but it's hollow inside because it's just a copy. It's just sort of and what's missing is the real you, which is different from any other person. And you have to discover that. Only you can discover that. And so these questions are just a help to move in that direction. But it's always good to remember that it's that process of listening to myself that makes it all work. That's the heart of it. And then I can compare my experiences to others. I can see what it's like. Okay, yeah, some people do it this way. This person does it this way. And that's fine. But in the end, that's just different expressions of, and what's my way? What makes sense to me? And where am I right now? And yeah, maybe somebody's got a lot of experience. Great. But I have my experience. Let me just stick with that. So many ways to say the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that really resonates. So, what do you do, Todd, if you get to a turnaround? So when I did the worksheet yesterday, and my turnaround was I don't need health insurance. I kind of felt like I hit I hit a stopping point there, and I felt a little bit frustrated. I felt like maybe I'm doing the work wrong, or maybe I'm maybe what did I feel like? Let me go back. It was like I don't need health insurance. I was like, this is stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then I feel bad because I'm like going to give up on this worksheet.
Yeah. One of the things I tell myself from time to time is that just because it's a turnaround doesn't mean it's true. And that gives me a lot of freedom. It means that, okay, shotgun approach, we just had a bunch of turnarounds thrown out there, which are just technical turnarounds of a statement. And let's see how many of them are true. And not all of them may be true. And if I give myself that freedom, it allows me to really look at the truth of what makes sense to me, as opposed to trying to push myself beyond what makes sense to me. And that's the danger, right? So a turnaround is just a suggestion. I think of it as a new hypothesis. A hypothesis is not a proof, it's just a theory. And so, oh yeah, you don't have to have health insurance. That's a new hypothesis. Let me see, is there any evidence to support that? And living in my situation where I am, I look and look and look, and maybe I don't find anything. I'm like, okay, well, interesting theory, interesting hypothesis. I'll leave it open. I'm not just going to close the book, but at this point, I don't see that as making sense to me. So fine, you can move on. This is you landing in your truth, just what I was talking about, and then finding what makes sense to you. Now, you can still play with it. I mean, you might find, yeah, I don't have to have health insurance because I don't have to survive a major illness, right? I could just die, or I don't have to have health insurance, like right, or I could have something that could have been dealt with in the medical system, but I didn't, and it kind of crippled me, and I'm happy with just being crippled. Okay, that's fine. My choice. I don't have to have health insurance. So that's getting to that subtle piece of it's not, I'm not required, it's not push, it's not absolute. But when I look at it and it just makes sense to me, if the healthcare is not covered by the government and I have a choice between paying insurance and being covered for bigger things that I wouldn't be able to have anyway, it's considering what's available to me, it's my preference to have health insurance. So that's how it works. It's just feeling what makes sense to you, but also playing devil's advocate with yourself. Okay, I don't have to. I don't have to. Nobody's making me. Or you might find other reasons. I'm just a chance taker and I'm willing to take the chance. And I think I'm healthy enough that I'm going to do that. I know I did that for a few years and that was okay with me. And then it didn't make sense to me. So just there's no right answers. There's no right answer. Health insurance is not good. Health insurance is not bad. It's just, and I don't have to have it, but it's not bad to have it. And so this is the more you can have an open mind as you're playing with the turnarounds, the more you'll see all different sides of it, and you can really explore that way. But ultimately, having kicked up all these examples and all these turnarounds, you're the final one that has the final say on what makes sense to you and where you go with it. That was just some great brainstorming, and now where does it land for me? And that's it. So I'm so secure and safe in that. Like I'm not getting pushed around by the work. That's not what happens. I'm not being told what to do by the work. I don't take orders from the work. The work is just questions. I use the work to look at all the different angles that I would have never looked at before. And then having seen all those angles, I naturally gravitate towards some or the other, and I find balance, and that's what works for me.